Welcome to Part 2 of the Plagiarism Workshop. Again, the main purpose of this workshop is to teach you how to recognize plagiarism, and more importantly, steps to avoid it. Now that you know what plagiarism looks like, you can actively work to avoid it. Planning your paper should be your first priority. If you know you are going to use other sources of information, plan how you will include them. This means balancing between ideas that you have taken from other sources and your own original ideas. You should also develop an outline or define a thesis statement that clearly formulates an argument about the information you find. This will help establish boundaries between your ideas and those of your sources. It may seem obvious, but during your research, be sure to take good notes. Again, doing so will ensure that you clearly differentiate between information from your sources and your own thoughts. Poor note-taking can lead to many problems, including improper citations and misquotations, both of which are forms of plagiarism. To avoid confusion, consider using different colored fonts, pens, or pencils for each source. Also, get in the habit of marking page numbers, and make sure that you record bibliographic information or web addresses for every source right away. Tracking them down later when you're trying to finish your paper can be a nightmare. Finally, talk to your professors, a university librarian, or one of the academic editors at the School of Social Work if you have any concerns about what to cite or questions on plagiarism in general. They can also point you to other resources that may assist you. But perhaps the best rule to keep in mind is, when you have doubts about whether an idea included in your paper originated with you, or whether you got it from somewhere else and just changed it a little, you should always cite your source. Remember to ask those two questions we talked about in the first part of this presentation. Did I know this information before I took this course, and did this information or idea come from my own brain? Providing citations strengthens your work by showing that you are not copying other ideas, but are processing and adding to them. It's very important to be clear on who said what. Ambiguity in your writing can often disguise the real source of any given idea, causing inadvertent plagiarism. Make sure when you mix your own ideas with those of your sources that you clearly distinguish between them. At the same time, when you discuss the ideas of more than one person, be sure to watch out for confusing pronouns. And finally, it's vital that you know how to paraphrase. A paraphrase is a restatement in your own words of someone else's ideas. Changing a few words of the original sentences does not make your writing a legitimate paraphrase. You must change both the words and the sentence structure of the original without changing the content. But don't forget that paraphrase passages still require citation because the ideas come from another source, even though you are putting them in your own words. So let's talk a little more about paraphrasing. If you're having trouble writing about another author's research, try this simple method. Close the book, put away the journal article, or walk away from the computer. It may take practice, but writing without constantly referring back to what you've read should help you frame your paper in your own words. And by keeping the book closed, you're also more likely to use a conversational tone in reciting what you've read and learned, illustrating that you truly understand what you read. Okay. So let's see if you know good paraphrasing when you see it. On the next few slides, you will find some examples of problems that you may face when writing. Keep in mind that many students often find it challenging to communicate another's work while using their own language and style, but still properly crediting the original author. Take a few minutes to read through this original material from R.D. Plotnick, who is writing about the issue of income support for families with children and the Child Welfare Challenge. Your goal is to paraphrase Plotnick. Now, let's see how one person paraphrased the author. In your opinion, is this paraphrase acceptable or unacceptable? It is unacceptable, because the writer has simply extracted words and facts that are not his or her own, and has failed to cite Plotnick's work. If this writer were an expert in child poverty and knew from his or her own research that the above reasons for poverty are true, then this writer could probably produce such a paragraph. However, stated as such, your instructor would likely realize that you are not the original author. Okay, so here's another paraphrase of Plotnik's research. Again, take a moment to read through the slide. Is this paraphrase acceptable or unacceptable? Unfortunately, it is also unacceptable and would also be considered plagiarism. Although the writer has given a citation, it is not clear how much of the paragraph is from Plotnik. Is it the whole paragraph or just the last sentence? The writer has also copied directly from the original material, changing a few things around, changing a few words, etc. Again, the writer would have to be an expert in child poverty to make the above statements without documentation. Okay, let's now take a look at one that is properly cited. Take a minute or two to read through this slide. As you can see, this paraphrase actually acknowledges the expert source at the outset and properly cites the material so that the reader could easily find it if necessary. On a side note, you should remember that a citation within a quotation should never be omitted, such as the Committee on Ways and Means above, but you need not include it in your reference list. This slide illustrates an ideal paraphrase. Again, take one final moment to read the text. Here, the writer takes the reading even further and produces what your professors are generally looking for. The paragraph is correctly cited and paraphrased in the writer's own words. But note how the writer has also begun to analyze the arguments and material being used, which is exactly what your professors want you to do. They want to know that you understand the research and that you've made an effort to compare, analyze, and synthesize it in your own words. So, we've talked about recognizing plagiarism and steps to avoid it. Even if you're confident that you have in no way plagiarized, it's always a good habit to review your final draft with a checklist in hand. When it comes to citations, remember that you should always cite your source even if you put all direct quotes in quotation marks, you changed the words used by the author into synonyms, you completely paraphrase the ideas to which you referred, you have a sentence that is mostly made up of your own thoughts but contains reference to the author's ideas, you mention the author's name in a sentence. Thanks for your attention. If you want to learn more about recognizing and avoiding plagiarism, you can find additional information at the websites listed here.